Well, good evening. This is Bethel Baptist Chapel in Holywell, North Wales, and we're continuing our study through the Bible in a year. We're actually doing pretty well. I think we're 17 weeks in. We're 16 weeks in. We've got 15 books done, and so it's our 15 lessons done. We're right on track, I think. And so today we shift gears. We spent a number of weeks looking through the first 5 books, which were the Pentateuch or the Law. Moses is sometimes referred to as. And these are books that give us the ethical background for the nation of Israel. They give us the laws, the commandments. Yes, their history as well, but mainly what shines through is the ethical core or ethical code of Israel. We've just completed the books of history. And again, not that we don't find history in the prophetic books, and not that we don't find prophecy in the history books, but that next group there from Joshua up to Esther here are grouped as the books of history, and those basically give us kind of the political flow of Israel. What we're going to find in the next 5 books, which are called wisdom literature or poetry. Wisdom's a subclass of poetry, you've got to get that right. But the books of poetry, 5 books are unique, and we'll learn a little bit about poetry that is Hebrew poetry it doesn't rhyme on sound like roses are red, violets are blue. They rhyme in thought, and we'll see parallelism that as 2 thoughts are put together, 2 sentences are put together, that they'll either echo one another, they'll be antithetical to another, and we'll see that there's several types of those types of thoughts. We'll actually pick that more up in the book of Psalms. We'll talk about these different ways of the scriptures and those books of poetry are put together. But the book of Job is considered within the class of poetry. We find the hymnal, we find a love, an ode to love, and then 3 books of wisdom, Job, Proverbs, and Ecclesiastes are considered wisdom literature. And so I think as we get into this, he'll tell us where the poetry starts, so we'll maybe jump in there. Author unknown. Certainly we know who the subject is, and it's a man by the name of Job. This is considered real factual history. This is not allegory. And possibly, if you look into who wrote it, don't really know. It's likely that Moses compiled it, and this would have been about 1500, 1400 BC time frame. And he would have had access to lots of records and histories there in in Egypt, which certainly would have had records from more than just Egypt. So he would have had access to a lot of ancient literature from which this could have come. Again, you can't pound the pulpit too hard on that one because it's not evident here, but the Jews will attribute this to have been compiled by Moses in that time frame. But the story is older than Moses. When you look at the words, the usage for things like money, etc., it looks like it's patriarchal. It's in the time of the patriarchs. So you can almost say this is the oldest of the books, yes and no. And certainly the book of Genesis goes further back in content. But this is likely dated to the patriarchal period. All right, enough of that. So the book, 17 books we've covered so far. They are all historical. Yes, we consider the Pentateuch historical. The 5 we take up now are poetical books, Job, Psalms, Proverbs, Ecclesiastes, Song of Solomon. These are, like his words, these are experiential. Now, the past 17 books concern the nation. These will look at individuals. The 17 before deal with the Hebrew race. But these 5 are going to deal with the human heart. Yes, the subject's more or less going to be Hebrews, as we can gather, but it maybe not that. I won't even make that assertion. But it's going to deal with the human heart rather than a group of people. And so there's much to learn about Hebrew poetry, as he points out here, but we don't have time to really deal with it in lots of detail. I just use that by way of introduction, that it doesn't rhyme so much in sound as it does in thought. So let's, again, brief explanation. I haven't mentioned we're on page 72 of our book. So a brief explanation may help in understanding it. Chapters 1 and 2 are not part of the poetry. The poetry will start in chapter 3, but it's considered the prologue to the poem. It gives us the background. And then starting in chapter 3, running through Job 42:6, is this poem, this interaction. And then the final 11 verses are not poetry, but a historical epilogue to the poem. So prologue, poem, and then epilogue. So the simple fact that gives the whole book meaning. Sorry, I don't know what's going on tonight. A little break there. Mary's like, you should have taken your sinus off. I wasn't like this at all. It can't be this chapel has any mold in it. I'll edit all this out. Sorry.
Okay, while we're babbling, would you anybody like water or anything? Would you like some water?
All right, thanks.
Okay. So the simple fact that gives the whole book meaning, and why it's so valuable for us, I believe, is that Job did not know the divine counsel of God. So between the prologue, which shows how Job's trials originated in the counsels of heaven, and the epilogue, which shows how Job's trials and afflictions served as enrichment and blessing, we have a group of older men, friends of all things. We're kind of wondering how good these friends are at times. We'll be giving Job advice as to why these things are happening to him. They'll look at it from human eyes and say, this is the problem. And we've got to be careful with that. As a minister, I need to be careful leaping to conclusions. When we minister to people, we need to be careful leaping to conclusions if the evidence is not evident. So they know nothing of God's reasoning, and they're basically theorizing in the dark. And we're to see that when affliction comes, God does have a reason. We do know that. We just don't always know the reason. And if Job had known the reason, no turning it around for his afflictions, there has been no faith involved in his part. We're going to see the faith of Job. We like to talk about the patience of Job, but there's really a faith in Job that shines through. So the scriptures are as wise in their reservations as in their revelations. I like that statement. Let's study that for a second. That's the author's statement. But scriptures are as wise in their reservations as in their revelations. There's things that the Bible doesn't talk about that there is really no need to. And again, the case of Job, the simple case he just gave is, where is faith if you have all the answers? So faith is when we don't see necessarily what's going on, or maybe understand what's going on. We cling tighter to God, knowing that even though we may not understand all those things, He's with us through it. He'll be on the other side of it with us. And so Job was not meant to know the reasons. And in this lies the message of the book. A lot of people waste their time. I remember, it's probably been about 20 years ago now, there was the big rage. It was all about angels. There may be ministering angels, this, that, the other thing. Folks, if we were meant to know that much about angels, the Bible would have written a lot about angels. Remember when we took our angelology and demonology class in Bible college? Yes, they do have those, Ronnie. A full class on angelology and demonology. You could have wrapped it up the first morning. Because what does the Bible really say about angels? There's just a few encounters. That's not our realm to play with. And basically that's going to be Job's answer. I am God, you're not. There's things going on that you can't handle, you don't need to handle. I've got it under control. You trust in me, and I'll take care of the rest. So the central message is blessing through suffering, or why do the godly suffer? It's a great book on that, on suffering. The solution is found in the explanation of the prologue and in the blessing of God upon Job in the epilogue. Our author likes to say this is a wonderful illustration of Romans 8:28. Romans 8:28. I should probably at least flag that one, for we know that all things work together for good. For those that are the called. Here we go.
Love God.
Oops, I went to Romans to Acts 28. That's not Romans 28.
And we know that all things work together for good to them that love God, to them who are called according to His purpose.
Yes. So, what does all mean there? All.
Everything.
Everything, all. Yeah. I'm just doing the basic. What does all mean? All. So, that's the Christian hope right there in a nutshell. And that, if you're a lost person, you don't have that hope. You could be going through something and it's like, well, what's the point? And then people say, what's the point? And they'll tragically end their lives, and end their lives even more tragically, going into a godless eternity. But what we'll find in other wisdom literature, I like this, one of my favorites because it's easy to remember, that a living dog is a living dog is better than a dead lion. Not lion's a majestic beast. What could be more great than that? If you're a living dog, and a dog was not smiled upon, and the Jewish thought is an angry little animal that would bite you and ate dead things and was a bunch of trouble. But as long as you're living, we have that hope. So Romans 8:28, you've probably gone over to Hebrews 12:11.
Now no chastening for the present seemeth to be joyous, but yieldeth. Now no chastening for the present seemeth to be joyous, but grievous. Nevertheless, afterward it yieldeth the peaceful fruit of the righteousness unto them which are excised thereby.
I'm not really sure why he pulled that one up. I understand where it fits in the whole, and we don't know why bad things are happening to us. One of the things, there's like a 5-point checklist, and I'm forgetting it right now off the top of my head. One of those is we need to do a checkup, with God. Are we doing right? We could be being judged, we could be chastised by God for something we've done or have not done, we're supposed to do. So yes, Hebrews 12, right in there. And in fact, it goes on to say, if we're not chastened, we're illegitimate children of God. If you're a Christian, if you think you're a Christian and you're living in unrepentant sin, and God's not chastening you, you need to go back to whether you're saved or not, is what that says. It with great force. Now with Job, there's nothing aside from Job has like one little reaction he has. His attitude is actually pretty spot on. He's not being chastised by God. He gets a little reprimand, but he's not being chastised by God.
Do you think he thinks he is, though, because he keeps asking why God?
I don't know.
He never doubted God, did he?
He doesn't doubt.
He was 100% there.
I think we can ask why, and one of the answers might be, I'm doing something else here, Job. It just makes it's not worth it. It's not going to help you to explain it. It's not going to make it any easier. And I think that is the answer, because as we go through his friends helping him, one of the answers is going to be, I think the first one is, you're in sin, Job. This is simple. Why do people suffer? They suffer because they sin. You must be sinning. So confess and get it over with. And Job's like, show me my sin. I think in his mind, he's done that first part of the checklist. He's kept short accounts with God, although that's certainly a good generic question to ask there. But we see from God's perspective, this is it seems almost sophomoric that Satan comes up to tempt God, but who accuses Satan of anything really great? But God knows maybe this is just going to be more judgment on Satan in the day when he gets judged. But Job will follow me, and I am blessing Job, but he'll still follow me. You just can't take his life. So he rolls in Hebrews 12:11. Personally, when I think of the book of Job, yes, it's a treatise on why do we have evil? Why is there suffering in the world? I like Job. One of the points he gets to is, I'm praying for that daysman that could stand betwixt us. And a daysman is someone that can adjudicate the situation. Someone of a stature that can put basically his hand on Job's shoulder and the other hand on God's shoulder. The image is like that, to put one hand on each shoulder and reconcile them. Let's go to 9:33 just real quickly. Me and my dry little fingers. So it says, he's basically he's making his case, for he is not a man as I am that I should answer him, and we should come together in judgment. Neither is there any daysman betwixt us that might lay his hand upon us both. I just like that. Oh, guess what, Job? There's a daysman coming. One that's 100% man, 100% God. I just see Christ in this book. And of course, we know the Job 19:25, 26. is the verse that Handel put to music.
Oh yeah. For I know that my Redeemer liveth,
Know that my Redeemer liveth.
and he shall stand at the latter day upon the earth. And though after my skin worms destroy this body, yet in my flesh shall I see God.
Yep. So, just kind of when I think of Job, he has his little outline. He wants to go to Romans 8:28. So yeah, that's fine. It is that hope in suffering. But beyond that, we have the one that is hoped for in suffering in Jesus. So we break down the book here. Anything else to talk about now? So the structure of the book, he takes those first two chapters, that prologue, and we'll see Job, devotion and prosperity. He's still focused on God and prosperity. Satan will come in and lie in his malignity. He just wants to damage and destroy. We'll see Job in adversity. 1:20 and 22, as he starts to be attacked, assailed by Satan. And ultimately, in extremity, we'll see Satan again, further attack, and then Job in devotion in extremity, to the point where he's suffering physically. He suffered the loss of material wealth. He suffered loss of family. And I like his dear old wife who says, "Curse God and die." Thanks. So,
What a supportive wife.
so you know what she thought. But anyways, he does not take that advice. You see the dialogue then, the discussion.
Red herring. What's
Yes.
the significance of shaving his head?
Probably just getting comfort. Well, in terms of mourning, I thought that was kind of a mourning thing. We can look it up, but we're in a time now, patriarchal period. And where do you find that verse? Where talks about that?
21. 20, verse 20. Job arose and rent his mantle and shaved his head.
I think it's a sign of mourning. That was, again, I didn't hear the verse. But if it's after he loses his kids, and it's a sign of mourning, I think.
Oh, yeah, that makes sense.
And of course, then he's going to be struck with boils and other things. He's trying to get comfort in all of that. Just has the potsherd to scratch himself with. Okay, so we'll see three groups. This is kind of that, when you look at the structure of the book, this is a book that really does open itself up to analysis. Whereas, by the way, you get into like the book of the Song of Solomon, the outliners kind of have a problem getting a clear outline through there, but Job very clear. We have the first triad. His friends come and they start out well. They sit on the ash heap with him, and at that point they're doing great. But then they start to talk. Chapter 4 through 7, we'll see his friends here, Eliphaz, then Bildad, then Zophar. And these guys will go at him two more times, and then Elihu, who's the youngest, as I recall, of the group, will hold his peace till the end, and then he'll have his little thing to say. And then God will give the real answer. And then he'll Job, the closing epilogue is proven integrity. His friends will be rebuked, and Job, not only will his trial end, but his family will be restored, or a new family, and his prosperity will be restored. So Job is factual. This is actually a good thing to remember. Some have suggested that the book is fiction, but the scriptures state that it is factual. If you go to Ezekiel, this is worth turning to Ezekiel if you can. If not, we'll read that for you. But invitations, Ezekiel chapter 14 and thereabouts, because we're going to read a couple of verses there. So 14 says this, and this is one of the, we'll talk about it. Basically, we were talking about judgment coming on Israel, and the message comes down and says, though these three men, Noah, Daniel, and Job, were in it, they should deliver but their own souls by their righteousness, saith the Lord God. So, does anyone believe that Noah is not a real person? Well, no, Jesus kind of talks about that. Is Daniel a real person? We've got a whole book written after him. really think he was a real person. Got too much there that could even lead away. So if A and B are a real person, Job really needs to be a real person. That would be illogical. And it's not as if he stopped there. Verse 16, though these three men were in it, as I live, saith the Lord God, they shall deliver neither sons nor daughters. Continue down. Verse 18, though these three men were in it. ... And one more time, verse 20. That's 4 times. Noah, Daniel, and Job were in it. As I live, saith the Lord God, they shall deliver neither son nor daughter. So, probably the most affirmative proof text for that. We can go to James 5:11. We'll hold that, but you have heard of the patience of Job. And so, seems to be speaking of a real person. That could be metaphorical, but when you look at what Ezekiel has for us there, there's no doubt about that. It's interesting, if you do a keyword search outside of the book of Job and outside of Ezekiel and James, it's kind of quiet about Job in the Bible. I found it fairly interesting. You will not find him outside those chapters listed by name. Okay, prologue, chapters 1 and 2 then.
That comment about patience of Job was a comment made commonly when I was a kid.
Yes. Mm-hmm. That's certainly one of the common phrases out of the Bible. It is, yes, legendary.
Did you know at the time it was from the Bible? Because, see, I wasn't brought up in knowing the Bible, so...
I didn't when I first started hearing it, but I didn't know.
Yeah. It's cool. It's cool when you find out all those common idioms from the Bible.
I say to youngsters quite often, they run off comments, and I say to them, do you know where that's come from? Well, no, it's in the Bible. It isn't. Just go and look.
Yes. Yeah. It's true. Many of them. Sorry, carry on.
No, that's all good. Yeah, full stops are good. So chapter 1 and 2 here, then we have the conversation, these 2 chapters between God and Satan. We get that little behind the curtains discussion there, and it's a divine revelation of what happened. Just as we find elsewhere in scriptures, you can say, well, how did that come out? Could have been, after the facts, God reveals that to them. And so Revelation 12:10, Satan has access to God as the accuser of the brethren. Then in Zechariah 3:1 and 2, Satan is standing in the Lord's presence to accuse Joshua. And the most striking proof is in Luke 22:31. So let's go to 22:31. Luke.
And the Lord said, Simeon, behold, Satan has desired to have you, that he may sift you as wheat.
That would make, I think, ice run through your veins if you're really thinking about that. If you're there and you're starting to understand who this guy is in front of you, and he says, you can't see it right now, but Satan's just waiting for you. He wants you. I think that would be a little frightening time.
But I have prayed
Yep.
for thee that thy faith shall not fail thee not, when thou art converted, to strengthen thy brethren.
Yep. Again, he's not quite got on when thou art converted. He hasn't quite got, it's not there yet. The coin's not quite dropped for Peter. And through this, we see some things to remember about Satan. Let's see what we learn about Satan. Satan is accountable to God. Even at this time, he is allowed some latitude. Satan is neither omnipresent nor omniscient. Only God has that power of knowing all and is always present. And ultimately, Satan can do nothing without God's permission. In Job 38:11. Let's turn there real quick. There we go. Well, we see certainly in the beginning, if you've read those chapters, that God sets boundaries for Satan. 38:11 says, and it said, hitherto shalt thou come, but no further, and here shall thy proud ways be stayed. Well, he's speaking about nature there. So how does that become Satan? It said, Lord answered Job out of a whirlwind and said, who is this that darkeneth counsel by words without knowledge? Well, he's not talking about Satan.
It's God talking about how he spoke to the
It's all creation, though.
yeah.
He's talking to the sons of God. That's where he may back up to. But I would have stuck in chapter 1 for that, or chapter 2 for that myself, to demonstrate that. Because what does he say? The Lord said unto Satan, here comes the command, behold, all that he hath is in thy power, only upon himself put not forth thine hand. So Satan went forth from the presence of the Lord. Now, it doesn't touch Job in that first half, but he'll come back. Well, if you let me torment him, he'll crack. And God still puts a limit on him. In chapter 2, Satan answered the Lord and said, skin for skin, yea, all that a man hath will he give for his life. So Satan's saying, yeah, but his life really wasn't at risk. But put forth thine hand down and touch his bone and his flesh, and he will curse thee to thy face. And the Lord said to Satan, behold, he is in thine hand, but save his life. So God sets the boundaries there very clearly. It does let him endure trials for a time, but the blessing is going to outweigh all those trials at the end. Okay, so again, Satan is a fallen angel. Again, this is our kind of angelology and demonology in 5 minutes. Demons are nothing but fallen angels. They fell with Satan. They are waiting their judgment, and we don't know a lot about them. What they do, though, they're finite beings. They're messengers. They can observe. I think this is where Satan gets some of his. How is Satan so good at what he's doing? He's been watching humans for thousands of years, and he can probably figure out what they're doing by watching what a particular human's doing at a particular point in time. And there we go. Then finally, their commission is in every permission there is limitation, and God limits what he can do. That's the top of page 74. So, yeah. Anyways, demonology, not much there. The dialogue. So the main part of the book, the body of the book, is in dramatic form. We saw those 3 successive rounds or triads, and there are 6 speakers: Job, Eliphaz, Bildad, Zophar, Elihu, and God. And so Job and 4 of his closest friends there. The central theme of the discussion is, why does Job suffer? So the first 3 friends try to interpret his case by analysis, and it becomes a deadlock, and the voice of Elihu enters, but darkness still remains. And finally God speaks and brings to a climax what man could never or cannot or could not solve. So Eliphaz's approach is the first to come up to console Job. Well, they console him for a few days. I like that. When they show up, they sit on the ash heap with him. And it's after some time that they begin to talk to him. And he'll give 3 speeches. We can see the structure there that we looked through before. He's the oldest and the wisest, so he gets to speak first. And he bases his argument on experience. He asks us to look at Job 4:8, 5:17 through 27. And note also that Job 22, 5 through 9, that Job must be suffering because of sin. Verse 13. So let's go just look at a couple of these. And pardon me for whatever my science isn't doing here. So 4:8 says, even as I have seen, they that plow iniquity and sow wickedness reap the same. So you're seeing wickedness, Job. Only one thing that answers that, Male. You know, we talked about it last Sunday, the blind man leading up to Jesus being the door. When he looks back at that experience, the first thing the disciples say, who sinned, this man or his parents? You know, why is he born blind? And Jesus corrects their kind of incorrect thinking, saying, you guys, there's other things going on in this world. And this is done to reveal the glory of God. So, but we see that mindset. If there's illness, it's sin. There's some people that take this to extreme. And I've heard some horrible things being done in the name of the Lord because someone has an illness or a condition. And they say, this is it. You confess, and they run them out of church. We don't always know the answer, folks. Anyways, 5:17 through 27.
Behold, happy is the man whom God correcteth. Therefore despise not thou the chastening of the Almighty. For he maketh sore and bindeth up. He woundeth, and he maketh his hands make whole. He shall deliver thee in 6 troubles, yea, in 7, where there shall no evil touch thee. In famine he shall redeem thee from death, in war from the power of the sword. Thou shalt have Thou shalt be hid from the scourge of the tongue, neither shalt thou be afraid of destruction when it cometh. At destruction and famine thou shalt laugh, neither shalt thou be afraid of the beasts of the earth. For thou shalt be in league with the stones of the field, and the beasts of the field shall be at peace with thee. Thou shalt know that thy tabernacle shall be in peace, and thou shalt visit thy habitation, and shalt not sin. Thou shalt know also that thy seed shall be great, and thy offspring as the grass of the earth. Thou shalt come to thy grave in full age, as a shock of corn cometh in his season. Lo, this, we have searched it, and so it is. Hear it, and know thou it for thy good.
So he's going to basically never turn from that line of reasoning. And in 22:5 through 9, he'll start in, is not thy wickedness great, and thine iniquities infinite? Say it. You can almost hear him kind of screaming it. For thou hast taken a pledge from thy brother for naught. He's going to give reasons. And stripped the naked of their clothing. Come on. And then it goes on there. So sin can be a cause of sin. Now, we turn that around. We can be suffering because of sin. And we see that in Hebrews chapter 12. God will chasten the righteous. He'll also let the unrighteous suffer as a way to bring them to him. All right, so Bildad, he's not going to be an improvement. He's going to be more severe than Eliphaz, and he bases his argument on tradition. Job 8:8. Let's see how he handles that. Job 8:8 says, For inquire, I pray thee, of the former age, and prepare thyself unto the search of their fathers. Okay, he's going to go to 18:5. We can almost just continue reading on, I think. Shall not they teach, they tell thee, in other words out of their heart? Can the rush grow up without a mire? Can the flag grow without water? While it is yet its greenness, and not cut down, and withereth before any other herb. So are the paths of all that forget God, and the hypocrite's oath shall perish, whose hope shall be cut off. So there he's going to go. He's a hypocrite. He's going to focus on God will not cast away a perfect man, neither will he uphold evildoers. And in Job 8:6 that we read there, that he infers that he's a hypocrite. Let's move on to Zophar. Zophar, he speaks only twice in the debate. He skips the third round and is replaced by Elihu. And he bases his theory and argument on assumptions. So each of them has a little different approach. One's based on experience. One, he's going to go to the tradition. And now the next guy, Zophar, is going to go to assumption. He assumes and pronounces a dogmatist, for he was dogmatic. Let's see what Job 11:6 has to say. Job 11:6, that he would show thee the secrets of wisdom, that they are double to that which is. Know therefore that God exacteth of thee less than thy iniquity deserveth. Wow, as he's dialing up a notch. Therefore Job's cut. He's lost his everything except for his wife that wants him to curse God and die. He's covered with boils, sitting on the ash heap, and he's saying, and God didn't even give you what you deserve. There's a friend in need. So, let's do 11:6. How that was 11:6. What does 24 have for us there?
Knowest thou not this of old, since man was placed upon the earth? And then it goes on, that in the triumph of the wicked is short, and the joy of the hypocrite but for a moment.
Yeah. Which is that so much, you think about David's writing. David does the why God. Why are the wicked prospering? Why is it that the innocent are dying and that the wicked prosper? They seem to sleep comfortable and that their beds at night and everything's great. And God has some words to encourage David in those situations. But here we go, the joy of the hypocrite for a moment. Well, so his narrow dogmatic opinion is in Job 25. And the triumphing of the wicked is short. So his theory is found in Job 11:6. Know that God exacteth of thee less than thy iniquity deserves. Yeah. Okay. So Job's response, and then we'll get to Elihu. Job refutes the theory of the three in the first round, that God always prospers the upright and punishes the sinner. Job is upright, and yet he's afflicted. I'm not going to read all those verses. The second triad, all three insist that the wicked always suffer, and only the wicked. And Job's response is that the righteous also suffer. In the third round, the same theory is restated, and Job declares his innocence of being wicked, and he declares that the wicked often prosper in this world. And so he's going to use he's been humbled by God, he was broken, he's melted, Job was softened, and all those verses there. He's really, you can say, at his wit's end there. And Elihu comes in really with more wisdom than his elders there. And his approach there, letter E, is different. He tries to convince Job that he must become humble and teachable and more patient. He says Job is sinning because of suffering and not vice versa. That's interesting. It was in his suffering that he began sinning. Let's see what Job 33, 8 through 11 says.
Surely thou hast spoken in mine hearing, and I have heard the voice of thy words, saying, I am clean without transgression, I am innocent, neither is there iniquity in me. Behold, he findeth occasions against me, he counteth me for his enemy. He putteth my feet in the stocks, he marketh all my paths. Behold, in this thou art not just. I will answer thee, that God is greater than man. Why dost thou strive against him? For he hath given not account of any of his matters. For God speaketh once, yea twice, yet man perceived it not. In a dream, in a vision of the night, when deep sleep falleth upon men, in slumberings upon the bed. And he opened the ears of men and sealed their instructions, that he may withdraw man from his purpose and hide pride from man. He keepeth back his soul from the pit, and his life from perishing by the sword.
You've well exceeded it, but I'm enjoying it. It's a good read. So 35:15, he'll kind of conclude. Well, Elihu this is kind of the middle of it. But now, because it is not so, he hath visited in his anger, yet he knoweth it not in great extremity. Therefore doth Job open his mouth in vain. He multiplieth words without knowledge. Wow. There's a friend. And so Job needed more than a human voice, and then it will come. So we'll hear the voice of God out of the whirlwind, and it will be chapter 38 through 41. God will set the record straight. And so the Lord will speak to Job about the power of God as compared to the littleness of man. And this is a great passage on who God is. So if you want to just kind of meditate on God, the Lord answered Job out of the whirlwind and said, who is this in darkness counsel by words without knowledge? And all the way down to verse 18. Basically, you guys are not me. It is, I'm not going to read all that. Okay, but good stuff. So in relation to the earth, comparing us to his creation, in relation to the heavens, 19 to 38, he'll pick it up. Where is the way where light dwelleth? As for darkness, where is the place thereof? That thou shouldst take it to the bound thereof, and that thou shouldst know the paths to the house thereof. Just, can you comprehend the vastness of space and where light comes from in the heavens in relation to the living beings? Job 38, 39. We jump a lot of territory there. 38. Okay, 39. Yeah, 38, 39.
Wilt thou hunt the prey for the lion, or fill the appetite of the young lions?
Yeah. So the answer is no. And that will be through all of chapter 39. And then special cases, chapter 40. This is actually a great little outline as you're reading this, because you'll see how it shifts. Moreover, the Lord, we got the segue there. Moreover, the Lord answered Job and said, shall he that contendeth with the Almighty instruct him? He that reproveth God, let him answer it. And Job answered the Lord and said, behold, I am vile. What shall I answer thee? I will lay my hand upon my mouth. Once I have spoken, but I will not answer. Yea, twice, but I will proceed no further. Then answered the Lord unto Job out of the whirlwind and said, Gird up thy loins now like a man. I will demand of thee and declare thou unto me. There we go. So, how far does he go? Yeah, all the way through 42, verse 6 on the end of that discussion. I just think of so many places that appears in the Bible. When even just the miraculous appearance of an angel, that's just an angel, a messenger from God. Pardon me, that but people are on their face before the angel. Didn't mean to wake anyone up there. But what we see, they fall down on their face. And I think that's when we get to heaven, and the reality of it's going to be very real. It's going to be reality like we've never experienced. And I think that to be before the awesomeness of God, we're going to crumble. That's how can we stand before that, knowing all we have, and then what's going to shine? Once those little bits of crumbled stuff fall off, there's going to be that little bit of gold that's a joy of knowing that Christ is our Savior, and that we rebuild. That's gone all flowery on you guys, but I like the wisdom literature for that because it reminds us of the greatness of God and really our position in the world. So clearly the purpose of God is to bring Job to the end of himself. Job 40, verse 1 and through 5, we just read that no segue there. And Job was at the end of himself. I think of Peter when he falls down and said, Depart from me, Lord. I'm an unclean man with unclean, that's what's going to be Elijah, an unclean man with unclean lips. Basically what Peter says when Jesus is asking him to come in, the big catcher of fish, as he's called, and Peter knew who he was before God at that point in time, although maybe not fully comprehending who Jesus was, that response to God. But you get to the end of yourself. But then Job 42, 5 and 6.
I have heard of thee by mine hearing of mine ear, but now mine eye seeth thee. Wherefore I abhor myself, and repent in dust and ashes.
Oh, that we can get people to that point, because that's salvation happens right there. When we see ourselves before perfect, holy, righteous God. But yes, Job got to the end of himself. And I believe Job was saved before this, but we see that point. Okay, the epilogue then. So what do we get out of the book? 42, 7 through 17. God will basically judge the three friends. Friends, I like the quotation. That because they had done so much damage to Job's soul as Satan had done, God transforms, vindicates, and restores Job. And verse 8, it says, Therefore take unto you... Yeah, that's right. Is it? Yeah. 42, yeah. Therefore take unto you now 7 bullocks and 7 rams, and go to my servant Job, and offer up for yourselves a burnt offering. And my servant Job shall pray for you. For him will I accept, lest I deal with you after your folly, that ye have not spoken of me the thing which is right, like my servant Job.
And it's a warning in verse 7 there, isn't it? You know, my wrath is kindled against thee and against thy 2 friends. You know, all you try to do, you're condemned.
Yeah. Well, they judge self-righteously. And he's not even pulling back. God doesn't have to pull back the little curtain on their lives. So, Eliphaz, let's take a look at your last week. It's interesting. He led off. He was a senior, and then God's okay. You're the senior guy here. I'm going to start at you. Then we'll work with the other ones. So I like that. The transformation. Him will I accept. I'll accept what Job prays for you, to intercede for you. My servant. I like that. He's vindicated. They were saying, well, Job, you're sinning against God. He's just judging you. Job, God says, he's my servant. And then restoration, we'll see in verse 10. And the Lord turned the captivity of Job when he prayed for his friends. And also, the Lord gave Job twice as much as he had before. And
he was very wealthy in the first place, wasn't he?
Yeah. So, never have to worry. Yeah, the thousands of camels and sheep and he lists them all out there.
thought you said thousands of Campbells then.
Thousands of Campbells, so that's a curse. That's what the Ellis has in his friends. Thousands of Campbells to watch over. Hey now, that hurts. But let every godly sufferer rest in the Lord and patiently wait for him. Psalm 37:7. That's a good one to highlight. Some of the most quoted passages in Job are.
The ones we've just gone through.
What's that?
The ones we've just gone through.
Once we've just gone through that 19:23 to 27 is that Christological expectation that he shall see him in the flesh with his eyes. So what's going to happen when his eyes are eaten up by worms? Well, God's going to give him a new body. And then 19:25 was that was our
I
day.
know that my Redeemer liveth, and he shall stand at the latter day upon the earth.
Yep. It's interesting. I like maybe I'm the only one that likes that verse 9:33, but I like the idea of Christ as that daysman, the one that can truly put his hand on God and on Job and mediate. So how much do you remember? Well, this is feed with a fire hose night. So what are the three main divisions of the book?
They are the prologue, the dialogue, and the epilogue.
Can't get any harder than that. So it's good. As you read, you'll see those three parts. Okay. Is Satan limited by God?
Definitely.
Yeah. Was the conversation between God and Satan real or fictional?
Real.
Now, as a Baptist, I don't know how the other denominations will handle Job. That's a fair question. As a Baptist, we're going to take it as real because we see he's a real person. So this is a real interchange. And I don't see any indication that it's not real in the beginning. So as Baptists, we take this as a literal. There's a man in the name of the land of Uz whose name was Job. That man was perfect and upright. Again, perfect has the idea of being mature in God and in his faith, and upright one that feared God to shoot evil. Because we know elsewhere in the Bible there's none righteous, no, not one. Yet we can live rightly before God. So there's nothing here to give us any hint that he's not real. And then the same with the encounter. There's nowhere it says, and then this fictional occurs. No, nothing's a fictional thing. So we take it all as real. The three friends. Can you name the three friends of Job that gave him advice?
A, B, and C.
Yeah, and if that's been about and so far.
Yeah, and there's really the fourth there, which
Loser number one, loser number two.
it's interesting because fourth friend gave advice too. And so, what is the message of Job to you?
Hold steadfast.
Hold steadfast. Trust in God when you can't understand.
If you think God's getting at you, it's to show you something you need to be doing.
So, the general reasons are we've sinned and God's correcting us and He won't chasing us. What's the book of James? I have that as like an opener. It's like holy sandpaper. He's either preparing us for something through that suffering, teaching us for a ministry that we wouldn't have unless we went through that suffering. He's teaching us something that we need to know, yes, or He's growing us in an area we need to grow. And all of it's for His glory, and all of it's for our edification, even when it comes down to being chastised. But it's kind of it's a little checklist to go down. At least prayerfully, you can be honest. We can be honest in our heart of hearts, and then even just say, "Lord, if I've done something wrong, reveal it to me." But if it's any of these others, help me to learn those things you'd have me to learn. All right, and your assignment for next week?
Read 150.
There you go. Well, if you read 5 Psalms a day, you still won't make it. But that's you.
Even by your maths.
No, hey now, I have some pretty good maths. No, very good. That's a complete run through that book, but I like the themes and kind of the breakouts.
I think that was a good approach to take that as a whole at one go, because you get bogged down reading which friend is giving what advice and when that advice and Job's responses. But to have that overview is clear.
It helps. Yeah. It also helps. Yeah, once you have kind of the big pieces, each of them has the drum that they're beating. you're a hypocrite. Oh, you're just a sinner. Oh, you're, you name it. And they do that. So, yeah.
So another message might be, pick your friends carefully. No.
That's true. Pick your wife carefully. Curse God and die. I want the insurance payout. I don't know what she was going to get out of it. I will say this in preparation for next week. Psalms is going to be a little frustrating because I think we probably would like to go through it in a more systematic way, more breakdown and looking at the things. Because it's, a lot of Psalms and a big chunk of the Bible we're going to blow through. But kind of like for Job, it'll give you the big picture that then we can look at. Really all he's going to focus at, if you look ahead, he's going to kind of look at the Christological Psalms, because those are the ones that have the most impact for us.